Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to my video podcast today. It's going good. Today's another day. It's great. My day's been going okay. Before we get this video podcast started, you know how I like to always get my videos always started with a moment of silence, followed by a serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers and for those of you that are still in the struggle. Again, please, a moment of silence, if you will. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. Okay, well, let's get started. Well, how's it going, man? It's going good, man. I had a pretty good start of my day today. It was great. I had music therapy to do today, so that was fun. You know what I mean? That's one of those things that I am doing in my road of life today, in this road of spirituality, positivity, and recovery, man. Like I've said in many of my videos, that I used to live a life of negativity, a life that was bound down by the strongholds of this negative vibes, negative energies, these negative things that kept me bound down. And for me, the toughest one was the bound down to the use of drug addiction, right? And dealing with childhood traumatic experiences and PTSDs and anger issues, just depression, just a lot of things, right? But I can honestly say today I'm a whole lot better and happier and in this serene place of spirituality and recovery that is unbeknown to me. You know what I mean? It's a new venture, if you will. But it's great, man. It's great because, yes, it was a little intimidating, a little scary, to finally get out of that box that I was in. You know what I mean? Because when I was bound down to all those things, I didn't look past the walls that I was just closed in this box, you know what I mean? And, that was my comfort zone. And I didn't want to go past that because I didn't want to deal with the issues. I didn't want to deal with the feelings. I didn't want to deal with what I had, with what had got me to where I was at. You know what I mean? Because ultimately the suffering that you're going through is where the answer is to get out of it. You know what I mean? And what I wanted to talk about today was a term called self-mastery, self-realization. It's just about you being you and how you can live a positive and spiritual life being the person that you are, because ultimately that's all you have to be, is be that person. You know what I mean? Be the person who you are, and your life will change. And because if you let me get into a few of these things that I wrote down, a couple of the notes that I wrote down, so that we can we'll kind of, I'll read them and then we'll kind of go into it, and I'll elaborate a little bit on how how I reflect to what I'm reading and that sort of thing, and how I believe self-realization has helped me move along in my life and get to this part of my life where I'm at right here now, where I'm happy, where I'm serene, where I feel spiritually connected with my energies of the divinity of my of my personal magnetic fields to the energy. You know what I mean? To Mother Earth, to the cosmos, to the divinity, to my higher power. And I wrote a few things down, and self-realization is nothing but the fulfillment of one own's potential. You know what I mean? That's basically, in layman's term, that's basically it. That's the definition of self-realization. and which is pretty simple, fulfillment of one's own potential, and everybody is unique in that. And I like reading, people. I follow a lot of people as studies and podcasts and books and just different intellectual and spiritual and helpful information that I believe is helpful for me in my journey. And one of the guys is a philosopher named Carl Jung. And Carl Jung's identified two primary attitudes in his studies. He says that there's an extroversion, which is a person who focuses on external world and other people, and the introversion, which is someone who focuses on the world and in oneself thoughts and feelings. And he also identified 4 basic psychological functions that include thinking, that we all have, that these are universal here, the 4 psychological functions. And this is thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And he uses a term called excuse me, let me pronounce this the right way. Individuation, which is a process by which an individual becomes distinct. And I like that. I really like that, because that goes back to the self-realization that says fulfillment of one's own potential. Individuation, he's talking about it, that each person is distinct in themselves. And you have a distinct energy level. You have a distinct pattern of energy that you have that's only you. You know what I mean? We all have, how a bunch of religious people, well, especially like in the Catholic and the Christian traditions, they say, God made you. There's nobody else like you. He made you unique. He made you to his perfect vision of you. And we all have that self-realization that we're unique. So if you want to, live a life that is, because we all have that option to live a life that is to your fullest potential. You know what I mean? Cliche type thing. And unfortunately, like it said, Carl Jung had referred to, there's people who are extroversions, who focus on the external world and other people. You know what I mean? So what that's telling me is that those are people who are letting the environment, their peers, they're letting those types of things dictate how they. It goes back to the 4 psychological functions of somebody, and it goes back to that, is that it's thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. So those people who are extroversions focus on external world and other people. They let the environment, they let social media, they let how people view them dictate how they feel, how they their feelings in their heart, the sensations in their bodies, the intuitions that they have. They let all of that take play on how they are as a person and which way their life is going to be dictated. You know what I mean? So I know myself personally, I know when I would get together with a certain group of people, I would let them influence me in doing, staying there doing drugs or I always wanted to be the people pleaser, if you will, worried about what people were going to think about me. So I wanted people to think of me as this guy who you need something, I got it. And I sold a lot of drugs, did a lot of drugs, and I just let that dictate my life. And what ultimately happened is I stayed bound down to that world, to that negative bowl of misery, if you will. And it wasn't fun. You know what I mean? Social media, people like to, hype things up. And, at the end of the day, man, it's not good. It's terrible. I could remember the last year of my journey in that world, where I would wake up every morning doing drugs and selling drugs and just hating it, just absolutely hating it. But it was such a repetitive thing that I did that my body was already used to it. Like, I need to do this before I can function. And it was just a terrible way to live. And another definition here that Carl Jung had was the introversions, that it's people focus on in internal world, on the internal world and one's own thoughts and feelings. And that is a person who is leading their life in a sense of, how do I feel? If and somebody who who cares and is aware of what they're putting in their body, what their actions are. They're those people who are mindful of what their actions are going to be when they speak, what their actions are going to be when they go to work, how they're going to do their work, or how they're going to talk to someone, or whether they're going to if they personally, it's like I'm mindful now of when I pray, how I pray, how many times I pray. I'm mindful of how I speak to people. I'm mindful of doing this podcast. You know what I mean? Because I want to be able to help and send a message of positivity, spirituality, and something that's going to help somebody move along in their life into this positive level, right? So, going back to the original definitions that we were talking about, which was the self-realization, self-mastery, I believe is, it's something that you have to do on a repetitive basis. And just like anything, anything you do in life, if you want to be a master at it, guess what? That means you're skillful at something, and you're paying attention, and you're giving this thing your undivided attention. You're giving it your heart and soul. Everything that you think, you're thinking that. You know what I mean? So you master things. And how is it that we know that our life can be different if we do certain things? You know what I mean? We know that if I continue to do these drugs, I'm ultimately going to either, number one, hurt myself, hurt somebody else, or land in prison, maybe even dying, but I continue to do it. You know what I mean? And that is where the thought processes of thinking things on a positive level and thinking things in a introversion level, if you will, to know what's right and what's wrong, but having the awareness in that subconscious mind to allow your consciousness to open up your subconscious mind so that you let those positive things in and remap the wiring in your brain so that your mental thoughts are coming out positive and not negative, and not being a Debbie Downer, and not being aggressive, and not being angry. You know what I mean? So, we all know if you're having trouble with something, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's overeating, whether it's having a bad relationship, whether it's not having a good, you're having problems at work, or whatever the problem is, we all know what the problem is. You know what I mean? We all do. And why is it that it's so hard for us not to change it? You know what I mean? And that is what I'm talking about when you think things in your conscious mind. Those are the things that you know are happening in your conscious mind. And the thing is that those are also the things you let in to your subconscious mind. So what I'm saying is that in your subconscious mind, those are the patterns that are mapped into your brain, into your neural system, that these are the actions that you do on a repetitive basis because this is what you let in there. You know what I mean? So that's why you're still stuck in the job that you hate. That's why you're still having this bad relationship. That's why you're still addicted to drugs. That's why you're still overeating. That's why you're still in this negative funk. That's why you're still in this depression, in this sadness. That's why you're still dealing with all these problems. It's because you allowed those things to come into your subconscious mind that are now took root. And that's how you act out. Those are the things that you thought about, you're talking about, and when you think about something, you talk about something, now you manifest this into the universe, into the existence, and guess what happens? Whatever you manifest and whatever you think and say and feel, and you send that out, when you send those energies out, guess what? You're going to get exactly what you're sending out. So if you're sending out all that negative stuff, guess what, man? You're always going to be stuck in that bowl of misery. You're always going to be stuck in that bowl of negativity. And I've learned, it took me a long time to learn it. You know what I mean? But I can honestly say today, I am clean internally. I've got, my mind is rewired now, where I do all these positive things in my life. I do nothing in my life, nothing, absolutely nothing in my life that I do is negative, except for probably watching Netflix series. Other than that, everything else is positive. You know what I mean? That is everything else that I do, everything that I did in the addiction, and when I was bound down to that negative world, I replaced it all. I got rid of all of it. I removed myself from that whole environment. I don't deal with the people that I was dealing with. I don't live on the side of town that I was living at. I don't do the things I was doing. I don't think the things I was doing. All I do is do positive and think positive things, and I manifest positive things, spiritual things, because that's what I practice. I practice positivity, spirituality, and recovery. You know what I mean? That is the basis of my life. Those are the building blocks of my life today. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm here to tell you that it works. You know what I mean? I meditate now. Check this out. My daughter got me these, and this is my meditative bell. And this is my bowl. I love that. Look at that. It's beautiful. And, going back to that whole mental thing, I believe that, and I know this to be true because I do a lot of reading and research on a bunch of the philosophers and scientists who deal with the energies of the world. And we all come from the same place, from the same energy. All of us. I don't care where you were born. I don't care what nationality you are. We are all connected in that way. There's a energy force in the universe that we are from. We're all connected to that. And when you get your mind and your heart to be and bridge that gap, because from the mind to the heart, that gap is torn down for everybody, and it's torn down by how you were raised. It's torn down by the adversities that you go through. It's torn down by the social media that you're involved in. It's torn down by your environment. It's torn down by your peers. It's torn down, a lot. And as human beings, we have the free will to bridge that gap. And for me personally, bridging that gap is doing all these positive things. I go to music therapy. I go to peer support groups. I go to NA 12-step program groups. I go to AA 12-step program groups. I do a bunch of meditation with a bunch of frequencies. And I listen to a lot of positive podcasts. I read a lot of books on different subjects like that. Nothing, bad. Something that's going to, get my mind, give me more wisdom, more intellect, more more positive vibes, if you will. And, I just started a new venture, just to I started this IT analyst, specialist, computer 11-week course that I'm doing now. And because it's just something different. It's something positive. It keeps me busy. It keeps my mind going. And, it's just a new venture that I want to take. And it's not negative. You know what I mean? It's a positive thing, because the rewards in the end are going to be, getting making money, I guess, in return of the things that I learned. And, I have a lot of things on my plate that I'm doing. Doing this podcast is one of the positive things that I do. And, I'm just grateful, so I'm in a working progress of self-realization and self-mastery, you know what I mean? Because I've got a lot of adversities that I've gone through, but I also have been involved and have been grateful that I've been able to get into a bunch of networking with people and in a positive way, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of things out there that can help somebody get out of those things that are bounding you down into this negative lifestyle. And it's as simple. It can be as simple as changing your thought process and bridging that gap from your brain to your heart, and your energy levels, coming into one, so that they're in line with the energy levels from where we come from in the cosmos. You know what I mean? So that's the stuff that I believe in, and I just figured I'd share that today, and hopefully it resonates with somebody. Hopefully that it helps somebody. So again, I guess at this time, if you would, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. I'd greatly appreciate it. And just know that when you do hit that subscribe button, it doesn't cost you a thing. All you got to do is tap that button, and know when you do that, you'll be helping out another veteran like myself, another person dealing with homelessness, PTSD, childhood traumatic experiences, drug addiction, alcoholism, anger issues, suicidal thoughts, depression, all of those things, because I, my friends, have dealt with all of those things. And I am living proof that you can get out of all of that stuff, man. I appreciate you guys listening to my channel. And I guess until the next time on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.